you Feminirds out there. This is Becca.
And this is Leigh.
And we have a really great episode of File 741 for you today. Before we get started, we actually have a couple of very wonderful guests here joining us. First of all, our dear friend Monica.
Hello.
And a new podcaster, my dear friend Jenny.
Hello, hello.
Hi.
All right. Yeah, we're really excited to have you guys with us. We're going to be talking about some really awesome comics today. So we'll go ahead and get started. So, our last episode, which was a few months ago, we do apologize for the hiatus. I moved again. So I do live in Tucson now. And so we were getting settled in pandemic life and everything like that. But we are back, and our last episode was about comics by Indigenous and Native people. And so Leigh suggested that we also talk about Asian and Pacific Islander comics, because we really want to talk about especially the things that have been happening over the last year, increased violence against Asian communities. Of course, we condemn, and so we want to bring awareness through the medium that we love a lot, comics. So we've got a really good selection here today. And so we are going to start off by talking about a comic called American Born Chinese by Jean Luen Yang. And this is definitely one that I've seen around, but I had never read before, and I didn't have much interaction with it. But Jenny, I know you were telling me that it was very popular when you worked in school libraries.
Yeah, I used to work at the middle school library, and the book was just very beloved by mostly the middle school boys. And the pages were pretty disgusting, like a lot of fingerprints, and it was very loved. I think the middle school boys really liked the superhero aspect in it.
Yeah, so it's really cool to see this kind of thing become mainstream. So like I said, I've seen it around, but I haven't really encountered it. So Leigh, I know you are just the star summarizer, so do you mind giving me a really brief synopsis?
Yeah, do you want me to just read the back of the...
Yeah.
Okay. So it says, Jin Wang starts at a new school where he's the only Chinese-American student. When a boy from Taiwan joins his class, Jin doesn't want to be associated with an FOB like him. Fresh off the boat, I imagine, is what he was going by with that. Jin just wants to be an all-American boy because he's in love with an all-American girl. Danny is an all-American boy, great at basketball, popular with the girls, but his obnoxious Chinese cousin, Chin Ki, annual visit is such a disaster that it ruins Danny's reputation at school, leaving him with no choice but to transfer somewhere that he can start all over again. The Monkey King has lived for thousands of years and mastered the arts of Kung Fu and the heavenly disciplines. He's ready to join the ranks of the immortal gods in heaven, but there's no place in heaven for a monkey. Each of these characters cannot help himself alone, but how can they possibly help each other? They're going to have to find a way if they want to fix the disasters their lives have become.
Thank you. Yeah, so a lot going on in this short little comic.
Absolutely.
I especially like the way that it's drawn. I think the panels are really well set up. The colors are really vibrant and engaging. And each little story has a very specific kind of style to it in the way that the story is told. And I thought it was really interesting, and I like how the stories really diverge in the end. I did have a little bit of a hard time with it, especially in the end, like kind of having all the stories come together felt like it wasn't quite as neat as I wanted it to be.
Yeah,
I kind of had to go back a couple times and kind of reread some pages to really understand the story. But I think overall, it's effective in terms of like what it's like to be different and feel different, even for somebody who grew up American, in a place where they are just very different, and people don't know how to react to that.
Yeah, I feel the same way that all three stories were interesting and well done individually, and then at the end when they kind of converged, it was a little confusing in some parts, and I also had to kind of go back and try and piece things together a little bit to kind of understand the ending a little bit better. I will say, of all the books that we had today, this one I think was the most difficult for me and the most uncomfortable, especially Danny's story, because there were so many horrible stereotypes in that section that I just was like, oh my god, it was making me uncomfortable. Like I felt like I was flushed while I was reading it, and it just yeah. But I think that was important to show because people need to see, flat out, like this is not okay. This is a terrible stereotype and it's not okay. And this is the way things have been portrayed in the past and the way they should not be portrayed anymore. So I don't know. This one was hard for me.
It really made me think of it really made me think of 16 Candles.
Me too.
Yeah.
As I was, reading those portions, and I made a note, like I wondered if it was painful for him to write those scenes and kind of have to put himself in that position of ridiculing himself and his culture in order to convey the message.
Yeah, totally.
But it does feel like the lesson is to really learn how to appreciate who you are as a person.
Yeah.
And appreciate that, like the scene between Jin and Wei Chen, like how they become friends through their love of Transformers. It's like they find the thing that connects them. And so you kind of have to learn that that's the way that you connect with people, because, it's not always your heritage that is going to allow you to be friends,
right?
As we see later on.
I found this book really relatable in a lot of ways, which was a little bit sad, but just a lot of like past feelings. Like it brought up a lot of emotions out of me. The first time I read it, and then also the second time that I read it now, especially the parts, when he meets Wei Chen, who comes to the school. Like I remember when I was the only Asian kid at school, and then another Asian boy came, and like immediately everyone was like, "Oh, that's your brother. Oh, you two should date." So I was like, all this is so hard to read, but it's like also relatable, and I like that I can see that kind of representation on the page as well. So overall, I've always really liked Gene Yang's works, all of his other books as well. It's always just like a fun, fast read, even if it's painful at times. And I think he has a way of like really reaching a broader audience with that too.
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, I think middle school is definitely the target audience. But yeah, I think it like Jenny says, it does a really good job of bringing that message to a wider audience and helping people like me who have never experienced that a better understanding of what it's like to feel like the outsider. So yeah, I think it's interesting, and I think it is an important piece of literature.
Yeah, from a teacher standpoint, the part that really like hit me was at the beginning when he comes to the class and the teacher mispronounces his name, and then when there were two other Asian students that come in the same thing, they all get their names done, and he just blows it off, and I'm just like, oh my god, you can't do that. That's like, a terrible way to start someone at a school and start that relationship with your students, but that is the way a lot of teachers can be, and that makes me sad. So
yeah, and it's also, kind of going back a little bit on the Danny story, like seeing him try to separate himself so much from Chin Ki and like trying to show that like he's not like that at all, He's like, this person is Chinese. I'm doing air quotes. You can't see it. It's a podcast. Versus me, who I am American. And then really at the end, kind of understanding that there's always going to be that reconciliation that has to happen.
Definitely.
Yeah. So really great book. Definitely recommend. And like we said, a good piece of representation that's got a pretty wide following, has won a lot of awards. And so it's good for that. Anything you want to add, Monica?
Let's see. From what I can see, like I did not read the books. I didn't read any of these books, so just so you know where I'm coming from. But like, this is actually making me think about my older brother, who moved. Like, I was the first one born here in America, and my siblings were born in the Philippines, and it just kind of reminds me of the trauma my brother grew up with, because he's very much instilled with the model minority thing as a child, and is still affected by it today. And he's raising a Filipino daughter now too, because his wife actually is encouraging her daughter to speak Tagalog, and we were encouraged to only speak English. So the whole fresh off the boat thing is like, oh yeah, it's totally like, yeah, I remember that when I was a kid and everything like that. And I don't know, yeah, there's just I just wish I could comment more on the book, but I can imagine a lot of the things that I will relate to in it. Because like I also remember a time when we were doing a cultural day and we did the tinikling, which is a dance of the Philippines, and like they wanted to feature me. It's like, yeah, and then I remember like being embarrassed by it, because like I was the only one, and my mom put me in the traditional garb, and nobody else dressed like that. So like I remember feeling embarrassed by it and everything, and it was a strange identity crisis. So, but deep down, I eventually felt proud of it, which I'm grateful for. But like the initial reaction of me feeling embarrassed, it was really strong, and something I'm still thinking about today.
Yeah, I think that's something that we definitely have in common. I remember feeling a lot of pride when people would make comments when I was younger about, wow, I don't know, you're so pretty for being Asian, or you're so like making like you're able to pass for really American, even though I was born in America. But I remember feeling like a weird sense of like pride, like, and then feeling really embarrassed about the people who could, like the Asians who weren't passing in that way.
Right.
And then like looking back on it, I'm just like, oh, I have so much to work out.
Absolutely.
But
absolutely.
the society really effed me up. So.
I know we're constantly going through that identity crisis, being first gen.
Or is it like people saying that you have an American accent and you don't have
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then now I have to deal with a lot of like embarrassment when I try to speak Korean, which so like it's the tables have kind of reversed now that I've gotten older. And so it's all kind of mess.
No, totally. I mean, I never spoke Tagalog or any of the native languages like my parents spoke, because I spoke like 5 different dialects. How am I supposed to like pick that up, right?
Mhm.
And like I remember growing up, like even if we did try speaking Tagalog or anything around it, they would laugh at, like other Filipinos would laugh at us.
Mhm.
And it's just like, do you want us to learn or not? I'm
Mhm.
confused. So everyone I know that I grew up with in our community never learned the other language. We only spoke English. And that's something we still talk about today, and how it was very generational, especially in the 70s and the 80s, when like a whole bunch of us just immigrated here. Yeah, there's a lot on that.
Yeah, for sure. But I think that's a really good segue into the next book we're going to talk about, which is Almost American Girl by Robin Ha, because she does specifically deal with that idea of that identity crisis, because she doesn't move to America until she's 16, 15 or 16, maybe a little younger. And so she, with her mom, moves into a household with other girls who grew up in America and grew up speaking English. And they're just like not at all accommodating to her. And especially when it turns out that she's there permanently, which is not a great move on her mom's part. Her cousin doesn't like even want to associate with her at school because she is that like fresh off the boat. She's just so different. I really, really like this book, not only because I think it's a really good look into specifically that identity and trying to fit in, but also the story and relationship with her mom is just super interesting. And the way it kind of turns out how she's really like her mom. But I forgot we should do a synopsis. So Leigh, before I get too into it, and obviously, as usual, Feminerd Files, File 741 is a spoilery podcast. So,
Indeed.
you know, we're going to talk about the ending.
Sure. So the synopsis says, for as long as she can remember, it's been Robin and her mom against the world. Growing up as the only child of a single mother in Korea wasn't always easy, but it has bonded them fiercely together. So when a vacation to visit friends in Alabama unexpectedly becomes a permanent relocation following her mother's announcement that she's getting married, Robin is devastated. Overnight, her life changes. She is dropped into a new school where she doesn't understand the language and struggles to keep up. She is completely cut off from her friends in Korea and has no access to her beloved comics. At home, she doesn't fit in with her new stepfamily, and worst of all, she is furious with the one person she is closest to, her mother. Then one day, Robin's mother enrolls her in a local comic drawing class, which opens the window to a future Robin could never have imagined. Almost American Girl is a deeply moving memoir about immigration, belonging, and how art can save a life. And I think that was perfectly written for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very, very effective book. And I love the way it's drawn. I'm a sucker for watercolor, but I especially love that all the flashback scenes are in that like sepia tone. And yeah, I can't even imagine, you know, I moved around a lot when I was a kid, but I'm white, I look white, like I could fit in very easily. And so I can't even imagine trying to fit in a whole new country, not knowing the language, thinking you were just there for vacation, and then your mom being like, "Oh, JK, we're staying here forever." In Alabama, right? Yeah, I really like the way she thinks and talks about American culture, because you know, there's this wrong idea that the United States is this like paragon of civilization and that everything is better here. And she's like, no, like my friends and I could go wherever we wanted. We could walk around Korea. Like we had a great time. And here I am in Alabama in the middle of nowhere. Like it's just not the same. And so it was really refreshing to kind of see that perspective, and to really, she does such a good job of helping us understand her experience.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I should raise my hand. I really liked her like artistic choice, even when she goes to the school and is having a hard time understanding when someone's speaking English to her. They show like when there's like a little cloud that like covers over the words, and it just made a really like visual it was just really like easy to see what she was going through and like what she was understanding, and just really walking through her life that way. And even when like the bullies are bullying her like initial perspective, like not really understanding what's going on, like everything's just so like overwhelming and like strange. And yeah, it was just such a good picture of exactly her experience.
Yeah, this book just hit me in the feels in so many ways. I really, really adored this one. I think what I also really liked about this is it's not only just her dealing with having to immigrate into American society and how difficult that is, and the racism that happens there, and the not liking of the food, and also the new family which has already lived there for a while and not really accepting her. Because that's hard too, whether you're immigrating from a different country or not. If your mom, if you moved somewhere, doesn't matter where, and then they're getting remarried and you're getting a whole new family, doesn't matter what culture you're from, that's going to be difficult. And so, there's that. But then also what I like is that she kind of also discusses the way life was in Korea, which also wasn't 100% great at times. The society really didn't accept her mom as a single mom and just assumed that she was loose, I guess is the polite term for that. And even though she was not, I mean, they don't know her situation, but they immediately judged her. But then also, like I said, once again, coming from the teacher standpoint, her younger education when she was in elementary school, and how I guess it was typical of parents to bribe the teacher to treat their student nicer and give them a better grade. And if you choose not to, then they really treat your child terribly. So her mom, you know, being a single mom, couldn't afford that, and also was rightly so saying, I'm not going to do that. No, that's not okay. So then her teacher, I think it was in 4th grade, was a nightmare to her. I just couldn't believe the abuse and how that was just considered okay. So that was traumatic. I felt, you know, I totally felt terrible for her in that situation. So I was so happy that when she got into high school, things were better, and she was able to make friends, and then she was really able to enjoy the place, and, you know, the culture, and really feel comfortable there. So I felt horrible for her when she kind of gets tricked into a vacation and then having to stay there, and then having to like leave all your belongings behind. And once again, like you said, the Korean comics, which, you know, I mean, this took place in the 90s, I believe. And so, you know, I could see that being harder to access. I don't remember really having it, you know, there were comic book stores, but I don't remember it having a more international section. Everything was very like, you know, DC, Marvel, and that was about it. I mean, we've talked as Feminerd Files that, you know, we've really expanded that culture, and now there's all these independent ones, and so many different cultures that are brought into this now that was not really in our childhood comic book stores. And so that being hard enough to find in Alabama as well, I can totally see how difficult that would be, that, you know, this was your favorite thing, this was the thing that you were into, this is the thing you grew up on, and now you have no access to it whatsoever. There's no internet, that's not a thing. So yeah, that I can see was devastating as well. Yeah, and then her mom, like, on more than one occasion, like, traumatically dropping bombs on her. I just was like, oh my God, I feel so hot. Like, yeah, I was getting emotional with each thing, because I just was like, oh my God, this is so wrong. I can't believe she did that to you. Like, I just don't understand. So kudos to her for dealing with all of that stuff and growing up and making this amazing book. I mean, I felt for her, like, this is not my personal story, but I felt like it was while I was reading through it. Like, I really walked with her in that, and I really, really liked how she did that. So yeah, I'm getting teary-eyed right now, because it was an intense book. It was really good. I really enjoyed this. So anyway, somebody else talk.
Yeah, what I wanted to say is I really felt like what Robin Hood does so effectively is allow us to sympathize with her mother while
Yes.
also not compromising on her own struggle and what she went through, you know, because I feel like, especially, I don't know if you read the afterword where she talks about she wanted to write this story and sent it to her mom so her mom could like read it and see how she felt about it, because originally she was really against the idea, and so I found that very touching, and to kind of see that reconciliation or that understanding, where I'm sure when Robin was experiencing those things, you know, she shows it. She shows her not being able to talk to her mom without just crying and feeling so alone and not understood. But by the end, you know, I love that final panel when it's their split faces, you know, because she even starts to kind of look like her and really starts to understand that her mom was really just trying to do what was best for her. And parents fuck up. Like, that's the way.
Absolutely.
Nobody knows what they're doing. And so she was trying so hard. So I really like the way she was able to show those perspectives equally without compromising on the story. And one final thought for me too is I really liked towards the end when they ended up moving to McLean, Virginia, near DC, you know, how she talks about being with other like foreign students was so monumental for her. And so it's really just goes to show how important it is to really have people in your life that you can relate to and that are experiencing similar things, even if the experience is not exactly the same.
Yeah, I also the ending when she goes back to Korea and then kind of experiences that feeling of this isn't how I remember it being, but being able to see it for how it is. But then so she's lived half her life in one country and half her life in another country, so she doesn't really feel like she 100% belongs in either one, in that kind of like gray area. I totally felt that. So yeah, I appreciate how she related all of that and made it relatable for anybody.
Have you been to Korea, Jenny?
Yeah, I've been there 2 times, and I loved watching all the scenes, like with all the food markets and everything. It was just like so amazing, and all the food was really fun to experience in the book.
I want that all right
and
now.
and I felt that way too. Like it's strange because it's like my parents were there originally from. I read somewhere, I forgot I read someone's like Instagram post of, I think, a Korean guy, and he was sharing that he or maybe it's one of these books, but someone, I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly where, but someone said that they realized their parents were funny for the first time. Was it in this book? In these books, they realized their parents were funny for the first time when they went to their parents' like country, and I think it was Korea, and like realized that their parents were making everyone laugh, and they had no idea that their parents like had this like completely different personality. So I feel that way when I go to Korea with my parents and they're just like taking charge completely. I'm like, oh man, this is your territory. Awesome. Kudos.
Awesome. Shall we move on?
Yeah. Did you have anything, Monica, you wanted to add?
No, not really, but like the first thing that when I Google the book, of course, the first thing I see is like the page where it's all about the fire grills, and I'm like, immediately just want all the Korean food because I love Korean food so much. So good.
I'm biased, but it is the best.
That's so good. Oh my god.
And Robin Hashi actually has a cook Korean book where it's like a cookbook. I actually own it. And she writes down like all the recipes that she learned from her mom, but it's all in like graphic novel style. It's amazing.
That's the one that I told. That's what I said we were doing for our next podcast.
Oh, awesome.
We're gonna do comic show.
That would be amazing.
I've gotten so into graphic novel comic books, and that was one of them. And spoiler, Monica, I got you another one for just as a gift. I have a gift for you. So I bought one, and then there's another one on dumplings. They're different authors.
Yay.
But it's like, I think hers was first, and then everybody else was like, oh, that's a good idea. I should do that too. And so there's like a whole bunch now of comic book, cookbook style. And yeah, I'm fascinated with them. I adore them, and now I want to do my own. So
let's do a whole podcast on cooking.
That's what I said for the next one. We're doing a cooking podcast. Yay!
Sorry, my stomach was still looking at the grill. So anyway,
it's fair. Good food, excellent. But yeah, great book. Obviously, highly recommend. But yeah, check it out for sure. So next we want to talk about a book called Whirlwind Wonderland by Reena Ayuyang.
I did read some of this one.
Cool. Yeah, we wanted to make sure that we understood that Asia is not just like Korea and Japan and China, and we wanted to expand that a little bit. We could have had a more diverse collection today, but they are out there. And so this book is really a collection of comics that this author and artist has been doing throughout the years and compiled into this little book. And it's really cool. Jenny and I were talking about it and talked about how we really like that there's a interesting mix of like cultural stories and what it means to be from the Philippines and her experiences, but also just kind of like slice of life, little fun stories about her life. And so because it is kind of a collection, I did not talk to any of you all before this about this, but I thought we could just kind of talk about our favorite story that we read, unless somebody steals yours, and then you can talk about a different one. So I won't go first. So Jenny, do you want to start with which story was your favorite?
No.
Okay, great.
A second.
Leigh, do you want to start?
I had two favorites, so I don't know.
You
I
can't
think
have
I'll-
two
No, I
Just
know.
one.
can't have two favorites.
Okay, I'll go to the one that I
That's-
definitely related to
That's
because I
diluting
actually
the definition of the word favorite.
yes. So I'll do the one that I related to the most because I was just telling my mom about it actually because it seemed very much like our experience. So it's I'm hoping I pronounce this okay. So it's arroz caldo. Is that how you?
Arroz caldo. It's like Spanish.
Okay. I should know that because I'm Hispanic, but I'm terrible with Spanish. So there you go. So anyway, this one is a short comic about kind of her relationship with her dad. And so it's basically phone conversations. So first it talks with her and her sister, and her sister asks like, "Oh, have you talked to Dad recently?" And she's like, "Yeah, I mean, he's fine. Everything's fine, you know." Everything. She's like, "Oh, really?" Because we had this long conversation, and then so this comes into a conversation with her and her sister about how her sister has these long conversations with her dad and they talk about everything over the phone, and then she's like, "Oh, that's not really how things are with me." So it shows a conversation with her dad, a typical one where she just calls, you know, "Hi, how are you? I'm good. How are you? Have you?" And the dad asks, "Oh, have you eaten?" You know, and yeah, I'm eating fine. Okay, cool. Well, I'll see you later then, kiddo, type thing, and then that's it. That's basically their only conversations. So then she starts thinking, okay, well, if my sister, and then it shows a conversation with her sister and her dad and how it's like 10 pages long and, and all these long conversations about all these different things. So then in the middle of it, she's also having memories of her and her dad and how, you know, their relationship was weird. And, you know, he mostly just yelled at them about different things that were kind of silly while they were trying to be, you know, kids basically. But then she's like, okay, well, maybe I should put a little more effort into that. So then she's trying to have more of a conversation with her dad. And like the initial one's a little awkward, but you can see that like he appreciates that she cares to even ask, you know, more about what's going on with his life. And so then those conversations, I think, start to expanding and they start becoming more frequent. And so that it's like improving her relationship with her dad. But then also there's one where the dad shares a memory of like, "Do you remember when, you know, all this happened? I took you here, and then afterwards I was like, 'Oh, I love you all millions,' and gives a big hug." She's like, "I don't remember that happening the way you remember that happening." And so anyway, this is totally like my relationship with my dad. So that's why I was telling it to my mom, because my sister does have longer conversations with my dad, and where with me it's not that way. And also my dad remembers things completely differently than how I remember things or how they really happened. So yeah, anyway, so that was the one I related the most to. I thought, oh good, it's not just me.
That's cool. Yeah, and I love the artwork. I mean, I love her art style, but I love the like little talking heads, like the way it's all set up.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
So I totally have that relationship with my dad too.
Uh-huh.
And it's what it is with him. Like, and my mom too. We don't have conversations. There's just no
okay.
there's no conversations at all. Like it's really funny because every time they call, like Joy's like, "That was short." I'm like, "It's always short," you know. But as we've been getting older, and my parents are now in their 80s, you know, I have come to understand that especially my dad, my mom not so much, but my dad, he just he wants the other person to guide the situation, and I never knew that. You know, growing up I always thought he was the one in control and everything. He had the iron fist and everything, but as I got older, I'm like, all he want, like, if he is sitting next to a silent person, he thinks they're rude. I didn't know that until he expressed that to me one day. I'm like, oh, and that's what us children do too, because we don't have conversations. So the older we've gotten, the more I have been able to talk to my dad a lot more, and it's amazing. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, Monica, do you want to tell us about the story that you really liked?
Well, like I said, I didn't read a lot of it because I'm terrible. I did a lot of gardening this week.
That's okay.
That's
but
important.
relatable, you know, is the acacia tree sculptures in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
That is a big thing. Every Filipino goes through that. We have the big wooden spoons. We have the dancing snickling dancers, and like, and we have the strange naked man in the barrel, which I do not understand, but we all had one. I don't know why. So I I learned a lot actually from that one because like I didn't know it was mostly like an acacia tree, and like I've come to love the acacia tree, in my adulthood, and like learning about different lore about the acacia tree from other cultures, but how, and I was like almost like, oh yeah, and I totally bought it that like this acacia like statue came down through generations, and you find out no, it's just a tourist trap. Which is actually a lot, and like that's the interesting thing about the Philippines. It's a very I mean, we are very an animistic society, before colonialism. So like I didn't realize how sacred things were, quote unquote things, like every little thing. And like, which makes sense because when I grew up, I thought the furniture had feelings. So I always felt bad if like I ended up destroying it or something somehow. And like, I'm just like discovering these little things as an adult. So I don't know. I don't know what else to say about that. I'm just kind of mumbling.
No, that's really cool. I think that's
Yeah.
really cool that you related so much to that story.
Yeah.
Did you have the same, like, she was embarrassed to have friends over from school when she was little because of it? Was that something that you felt?
No, not really. I never felt embarrassed is the thing. If anything, like I was more embarrassed. I was the youngest one. So I was more embarrassed that my parents weren't as involved because they weren't as involved because they already did everything that I did with my siblings. So they just never showed up. That was the more embarrassing things for me growing up. And even like with their thick accents and stuff, I never felt embarrassed. My friends would be like, "Oh, you understand what they're saying?" And I'm like, "Yeah, they're speaking English." you know. So I was grateful. I mean, we did have a really good like big Filipino community growing up in like small town Pennsylvania. But again, all of us except for maybe one family, we were more Americanized. Like we weren't encouraged to speak. We were encouraged to like, do cultural things and definitely learn how the food, but we weren't taught the language, which as growing up older makes me sad. It just makes me sad that like that's not a thing. And like I felt the embarrassment more with like my brother and my sister who are 7 and 10 years older than me. They like I was so interested in everything and no one would tell me, about if I had questions about our still questions about our ancestry or anything like that. They're like, "Oh, why do you want to learn that kind of stuff? We're in America now." It's very, I mean, even the Philippines is very Americanized too. I mean, they celebrate Thanksgiving. So, which is strange to me,
Yeah.
when I visited there when I was 18 years old, it was like they had the second largest mall in the world, and like this is a impoverished country. Why? It's like that's the thing. That's the material thing, and that's how. Yeah, it's bizarre, and it's still a lot to process, and still processing, and there are books and books and books and books about it that are too much and overwhelming sometimes.
Yeah, white people have ruined everything.
Well, I mean, like, I still like the thought, like we did kill Magellan, so
There you go.
there's that. So I don't know. Yeah, there's still so much to unpack, and thank God for therapy.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, Jenny, was there a particular story that stood out to you in this collection?
Well, Monica and Leigh both definitely chose the most relatable ones.
Sorry.
I did enjoy the I did enjoy the slice of life in the bus. Thinking about Brad Pitt story. I thought that was pretty fun, and the drawing was so like different from all the other ones. I think actually each of her comics were very different from each other, but this one was just a lot of fun, and it's still relatable because she's thinking about like, what is my purpose? What am I doing? But also really enjoying the bus ride as well, which I do miss that about like Chicago, where I used to live. Just the subway and watching all the people and just that quiet time, like when no one else is not too many other people are there. So she really captured that well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely related to that feeling of just like staring out of the window and just like letting your imagination just go free. And I love the panel where they keep trying to do the lift, and it's just like over and over and over and over
Yes,
and
that was my
over.
favorite.
They're trying, and it's just not working out the way she wants. But yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that. Each comic does have a very distinctive style in terms of like layout and panel construction, but they all, you know, are her, you know, very distinctly. But yeah, I really enjoyed. It's not titled, but the one in the middle that's in color,
Mm-hmm.
where she's drawing in her calendar book,
Mm-hmm.
because I really like the way that each page is just kind of about something different. You know, there's one about food, there's one about going to the movies with her pen and her pencils being like, excuse me, how dare you? And I really liked the one specifically about like the moon. I just thought they were really beautiful, and I really liked the way that she talks about her pregnancy and time moving forward, and it's really evident, like in an actual calendar, showing this progression through her life. So I thought that was a very poignant story to include.
Yeah, and it's nice to see comics in colored pencil, especially this dense and colored pencil. That's what I think I really love about the cover of it too. I keep staring at it. I like the texture and the movement.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's really beautiful. But yeah, really cool. I'd like to kind of see if she has other stuff published and where, because I'd like to see kind of where. I think this is a collection. Um, it's 2001 to 2009, so quite old. Jenny and I were just talking about how long ago 2009 was.
That was like 3 years.
Not
3 years.
like 13. 12, I guess. But yeah, so I'd really like to see if she has some more recent work out. So
Yeah.
I got this one from Better World Books.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the library is not very good about carrying it, so we should call our libraries. Tell them
I couldn't find it online anywhere in libraries or digital or anything. I had to buy it too on Amazon. And it was used. It wasn't a brand new one either, so it's a little harder to come by.
Yeah, but well worth it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so we are going to transition. We're going to talk about one more comic today, which is a really fun one, called Stargazing by Jen Wang, which I did not realize until I got to the very end is the Jen Wang of The Prince and the Dressmaker and IRL. I just love her stuff so much. She's amazing. And this is a really fun comic, definitely catered to younger audiences. And Leigh, why don't you give us the little breakdown of what it's about?
Sure. Moon is everything Christine isn't. She's confident, impulsive, artistic, and though they both live in the same Chinese American community, Moon is somehow unlike anyone Christine has ever known. When Moon's family moves in next door to Christine's, Moon goes from unlikely friend to best friend. Moon even tells Christine her deepest secret, that she sometimes has visions of celestial beings who speak to her from the stars, who reassure her that Earth isn't where she really belongs. But then catastrophe strikes. After relying on Moon for everything, can Christine find it in herself to be the friend Moon needs? Its author illustrator Jen Wang draws on her childhood to paint a deeply personal yet wholly relatable friendship story.
And me, who doesn't read any synopses before I do anything, I didn't realize until I got to the very end in the afterword that it was based on her own experience as a child. So I thought that was really interesting personal take on that experience. But yeah, I love this book. I think it's so adorable. I really love the character design. It reminds me of Peanuts, like because it's for a little bit of a younger audience. And so I really love that. But yeah, I love too that this story is really inundated with Chinese culture and um, what it's like to be in a Chinese American community, but also very much about the middle school experience and what it's like for, yeah, I guess
Elementary school?
elementary school. It seems like they're what, 10 maybe, so I
Mhm.
guess 10 or 11,
Yeah,
12,
I
something
would
like
say
that.
elementary.
But yeah, so like that, still that period of transition of like you're kind of finally coming into your own and like
Mhm.
getting a little bit more independent, and everything is way more confusing and difficult, and friends are hard, and it's rough.
Yeah, I really, really love this one a lot. It actually made me cry a lot because the
Mhm.
ending is just so. I mean, it's sad about what Moon has to go through, and also what I'm sorry, what's the other character's name?
Christine.
And also what Christine is, yeah, going through in her head as well. Like, especially when you're a young person and just not knowing how to like navigate such a tough health issue that's going on with a close friend of yours. It's the whole graphic novel was just able to, I don't know, encompass their friendship so well,
Mhm.
or showcase that really well. And also just like meeting a new person who is, it actually reminded me of my best friend who's also Korean and probably my only Korean friend. And just she's exactly like Moon. And I think I'm a lot like Christine. So it was very relatable in that way. Like, wow, how does this one person have so much like confidence already at such a young age and just no, I don't know, just no fears. And I don't know, I thought Moon, both characters were just so lovely.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. Moon gave me a very strong, like, Steven Universe kind of vibe,
Mhm.
if you're
Yes.
familiar with Steven
Definitely.
Universe, like very bright and just imaginative and cheerful, but sometimes really surprising and also kind of troubling at times,
Mhm.
where things don't really go where you expect them to. And yeah, I think it's really interesting, especially to see, like Jenny said, how to try and figure out how to navigate those difficult conversations, especially when you're already in a place of we're not really sure if we're still friends, like things are awkward between us, and then to have to deal with something so heavy, um, it's tough. But I especially love the layout of these panels. I think they're really creative and beautiful, and I love the Moon's drawings of the angels. There's
Mhm.
especially in the scene where she's going into surgery, and they're just like, "Good night, bye." And it was something that related to a little bit in that when I was in college, I started taking an antidepressant that I wasn't on for very long because I just felt just like an undead person. Like I was so foggy,
Mhm.
but it made me stop dreaming. And for a long time, dreaming was the dreams that I had were very important to me because they were so vivid and like the feelings in them and the images in them were so strong that I felt like I was kind of losing a part of me
Mhm.
um when I stopped dreaming. And so I kind of imagine that uh Moon might have a similar, or Jen Wang even might have had a similar experience of like once the tumor was gone, did she stop having those visions and kind of miss those those feelings and those images?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, yeah, I've kind of had a similar experience. Uh, Not sure I really want to go into it, but uh, yeah, the same kind of feeling of like losing something that was so much a part of you, you know, but in the for the greater good, I guess. And but
Yeah.
yeah, it's still kind of missing that, and wishing, that still was maybe a part of me, but it's not. So, yeah, that's all I'll
Yeah.
say about that.
That's totally fine. Yeah, and I love too that with the kind of theme of all of these books, it's really a story about figuring out who you are
Mhm.
and what you like and what you want your life to be like, even at such a young age. But it was also refreshing to not have them have to deal with the same level of like harassment and racism in something like American born Chinese, excuse me, backwards. That it was just a little bit more of a pure kind of childhood story, set in a very important backdrop. Like, again, I think this kind of story is really important for somebody like me, you know, who doesn't have that kind of cultural background to see, you know, this is what life is like. It doesn't matter. But for somebody who is Chinese American, that kind of representation is so important, or Asian American. Any other grand thoughts about that one, Leigh?
No.
Jenny and I dominated the conversation
No,
on that.
that's okay. This one, yeah. No, definitely. I understand.
Also, while you were talking, I found a spider on me. It was
Oh my
alarming.
God.
Oh, okay.
It's good. It's gone now.
No, I got while you guys were talking, I was flipping through to look at different panels that you were talking about, and then I started reading it again and getting like sucked back in. So
Right?
so
It's
sorry.
so good.
Yeah, it is. It's really good. And this one I think
K-pop dance is so cute.
Yes, so adorable. Well, and I also don't want to like project, because, you know, as much as Jen Wang is a real person and Moon is, you know, some part of her, in a semi-autobiographical way, but I just picture Moon being so queer, like growing up and just being just awesome, because she already is.
Is
as
she
such
the
a
one
young
with the
kid.
short? Is she the one with the short, messy hair?
Yeah.
Okay. I just saw this panel of them watching Star Wars, so cute.
I think the thing that I found the most relatable about this felt very much like what I feel like my students sometimes experience, like Moon's kind of outbursts when she gets upset. Like, she's, you know, really good student, you know, everything's fine, but then, you know, something happens and they go from 0 to 10. I have some students like that we were trying to like work on, you know, better reactions to things instead of like, you know, jumping that forward and then getting aggressive like that, you know. So that kind of anger management situation. So that one felt very relatable. I'm like, oh yeah, I've you know, had students like that. You know, but like I said, that doesn't necessarily make them a bad kid. It just means that they just need to work on, you know, their reactions to things and how to handle that in a better way. But then also Christine as well, like, you know, just wanting to paint her nails, but trying to do it so that her parents can't see, so she does it on her feet because she figures then, you know, in her pajamas and everything, nobody will ever see it without socks type thing.
I totally did that when I was a kid.
Yeah, you know, like those little things of like just trying to be like all the other kids, what the other kids are doing, even though your parents don't really want you to do that just yet, you know. Yeah, I don't know. It very much spoke to me looking in and seeing like, oh, I bet you my students are going through some of this stuff too. So, yeah, that's was my take on it.
Yeah, just to show you that these books, while they have like target demographics, are so beneficial for everybody to read. You know, as an adult, we are finding so much meaning. I mean, I think that's a particular talent of Jen Wang's, is her storytelling. But, you know, this is a really important book to have at the Scholastic Book Fair and in your school library. So for sure. Yeah, these are all really, really great books. I'm always really appreciative of the opportunity to kind of expand my horizons and look out for things that I wouldn't normally look at or read. So thank you, Leigh, again for the suggestion.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any closing thoughts?
I would just say, kind of seconding what you just said, Beckah, but these books are relatable for everyone, no matter your race or age. So, yeah, I totally agree.
And I think right now that's important for our culture, you know, that these are relatable stories from Asian authors. And, you know, with how everything is right now in our current culture, it's nice to have these options of giving this to kids and giving this to even adults, to read and say, look, they're human. We're all human. Everybody can relate to this, no matter what your culture, no matter what your race. This is one of those ways to reach out and show that we're all human beings.
Yeah, I don't want these books to always only just be on the Asian American book lists. Like, I want them on a lot more book lists. Yeah. Exactly.
And like you said, having that at the Scholastic Book Fair with the other comics and not just on, like you said, the highlights of, of a cultural shelf type thing. That's, yes, it should be, also highlighted with multicultural stuff, but also this should be something that is just, available everywhere. So that's
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm so tired today, guys.
No!
I'm trying so hard to form
I'm
words,
so
and
hungry.
I'm like, oh my god, I'm
some of these panels.
So exhausted.
Yes, well put. Thank you so much.
Okay, if you say so.
I was more talking to Jenny, but
I was gonna say I'm just babbling here at this point. I don't even know what day it is anymore.
Well, is it Wednesday?
It's Wednesday.
Okay,
yeah, so cool. Well, I think we can close out. This has been fun. This has been a good time. Thank you, Jenny, for joining us, and thank you, Monica, for giving your insights. You're always a joy to be around. I mean, you're not Joy, but
that was
my
good.
wife's name is Joy. Get Joy jokes all the time.
Alrighty, do you want me to do the ending?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. This feels almost like our first podcast. We're like fumbling around. Should I do this?
I also got very little sleep last night, so it's fine. We're good. This is what editing software gives us the capabilities to make us sound more coherent.
And we should all have Asian food right now.
I was just thinking that. And also, I don't think I've eaten a lot of Korean food, but now I'm fascinated.
Okay, well, someone's
it's not too
coming
late.
I've eaten a lot of Chinese food, a lot of Japanese food, although I'm sure it's Americanized versions that aren't very, authentic. But yeah, I was just thinking that. I'm like, I'm not sure I've had I've had some Vietnamese food, but I'm not sure I've had much of
You
Korean.
live in the town where there is amazing Korean food.
Do I? Okay, that's good to know. Okay.
And the only Filipino restaurant in
Really?
Denver.
I didn't know. Really?
Yes.
I never think Aurora has anything good, so that's good to know.
No,
Aurora has all the Korean food.
Does it?
Aurora
Okay.
has all the good food. Every time someone
It does.
I'm like, no, Aurora has the best food.
Well, I guess that's
Agreed.
good to know.
I totally agree.
I said I come from parents that are like, let's go to Village Inn. I'm like, oh god, okay. So, all right, fine.
Leigh, you had no idea what a magical place you live in.
Okay, well then somebody needs
We're
to
gonna
tell
have
me,
to take a tour
because my family is so limited to chain restaurants that it's ridiculous. Okay, well that's good to know. Thank you. Now I'm excited. So yes, now I should go out and have some food. Okay, are we ready?
Yes.
All right. Well, this has been another exciting episode of File 741. I'm Leigh.
I'm Beckah.
I'm Jenny.
And I'm Monica.
Thank you for listening, and please like us on Facebook or follow us on Instagram and Twitter. You can tune into all of our podcasts on iTunes, Podbean, YouTube, or on the feminerdfiles.net. Yay!
Woo!